In Venezuela on Friday afternoon, a new flight carrying 183 migrants arrived at the Simon Bolivar International Airport as part of the Back to the Homeland government plan. The Mexican government welcomed Friday the United States' decision not to impose tariffs on auto parts produced in the country, since they are considered within the Mexico-United States-Canada agreement. And the Palestinian Authority in Gaza denounced that Israel is using hunger as a weapon of war. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Venezuela on Friday afternoon, as part of the Back to the Homeland government plan, a new flight carrying 183 migrants arrived at the Simon Bolivar International Airport in Maiquetía, La Guaira. The U.S. flight that took off from the United States landed in Venezuela after a stop in Honduras and was received by the Venezuelan Minister for Interior, Justice and Peace, Diosdado Cabello. Let us recall that earlier on Friday, a flight with 174 nationals on board was similarly received by the minister, who specified that over 3,000 nationals have returned to the country in the last few days as part of the initiative of the Bolivarian government aimed at guaranteeing the safe and dignified return of Venezuelan citizens.
183 nuevos venezolanos regresan. 183.
183 new Venezuelans are returning. 183 new Venezuelans, most of them men, 157 men, 26 women, no children are coming, and we understand that this is the arrogant response of imperialism to the overwhelming demand of hundreds of thousands of people in Caracas demanding the return of Mike Lee, of the outrage caused in the world by the decision taken by U.S. imperialism to kidnap children. In its arrogance, the answer is exactly that. No, I am not bringing any child. I continue separating families because I am the imperialism, and we from here, from Venezuela, we will continue demanding their return to Venezuela, not only the children, but all the Venezuelan men and women who are being kidnapped in the United States, who are being persecuted in the United States, who are today kidnapped in a regime of terror, in a concentration camp in El Salvador.
Moreover, the Minister of Interior, Justice and Peace denounced the leader of the Venezuelan extreme right, Maria Corina Machado, for threatening the peace and sovereignty of the country.
It is the government of the United States separating and hurting Venezuelan families. Now who are those responsible for this? Those who have asked for sanctions, those who have asked for blockades, and we hold Maria Machado responsible for anything that happens to Mike Ellis or anything that happens to the Venezuelan children who are kidnapped in the United States, because she applauds all the decisions of Donald Trump's government. While they ask for sanctions, blockades, they applaud the kidnappings. They say that all the Venezuelans that are outside our country are criminals. We are receiving them here as human beings, as brothers and sisters, and whoever has committed crimes and made mistakes, justice is in charge. But it cannot be that just to separate a family, they make up that the person is from the train from Aragua, being a big lie. The issue of the Aragua train is falling again. IT no longer has any support whatsoever. IT is just a big lie of the government of the United States and its partners here in Venezuela. That is why I hold responsible, we hold totally and absolutely responsible, anything that happened to a Venezuelan child, to MRS. Maria Corina Machado, who has asked for sanctions and is at the forefront of this policy of discrimination, of persecution against her own nationals.
Through an official communique, the Venezuelan government categorically rejected a statement issued by the International Court of Justice regarding the provisional measures requested by Guyana against the Venezuelan electoral process for the selection of authorities in the state of Guyana Esequiba. In the statement, which described the measure as abusive and interventionist, Venezuela reaffirmed that it does not and will never recognize the jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice, nor will it comply with any decision issued by it to settle the territorial dispute over the Guyana Esequiba, in a process that has been rigged from the outset and manipulated by anti-Venezuelan corporate interests that have nothing to do with justice. In this sense, the Bolivarian government stressed that this territorial dispute is governed by the 1966 Geneva Agreement, a legally binding instrument that established the obligation of the parties to settle the territorial dispute through a practical and mutually acceptable arrangement, also adding that nothing in international law allows the International Court of Justice to interfere in matters that are exclusively within the domestic jurisdiction of Venezuela, nor to attempt to prohibit a sovereign act organized within the framework of its participatory political system and based on its constitution and national legislation. The statement goes on to underscore that the Guyana Esequiba is an inalienable part of the Venezuelan territory and a legacy of our liberators. Finally, the Venezuelan government reiterated its demand that the government of Guyana stop delaying direct negotiations and strictly comply with the Geneva Agreement as the sole valid path to a definitive, peaceful and satisfactory settlement for both parties regarding the territory of the Guyana Esequiba. The International Meeting of Solidarity with Cuba, Anti-Imperialism and Against the Resurgence of Fascism was held in Havana, Cuba, as part of the celebrations for the International Workers' Day. The Havana Convention Palace hosted nearly 1,000 people, representing 269 organizations and 39 countries, who raised their voices against hatred, discrimination and fascist escalation at world level. The dialogue was led by President Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez and was an opportunity to make visible the struggle against the blockade imposed by the U.S. government on Cuba and to condemn the genocide in Gaza.
I'm absolutely honored and humbled to be here in Cuba. This is my first time in Cuba, and it's one thing to intellectualize imperialism from within the belly of the beast, and it's another thing altogether to witness the effects of imperialism and the United States blockade against Cuba, to see the determination and the spirit of the Cuban people firsthand it's amazing. You know, I've had the chance to witness Cuban workers, from the average worker on the street, people training to be doctors, people in educational centers. And the one thing that keeps coming to mind for me is the high level of organization of the Cuban government in the face of deprivation and in the face of poverty.
In this context, U.S. United Electrical President Zakia Royal also referred to the relevance of this meeting for the unity of the peoples regardless of gender and race.
Be a union member, and for my Black people in the United States, like I said, I'm here to experience it and to be able to go back and tell them, you know, we have to continue to fight. We have to continue to hold the bosses, the oppressors, accountable for how they treat us and, you know, how they pay us and everything, and that our work is valuable. And if we don't work, they don't get paid.
And now we have a short break coming up, but first remember, you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates and more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In Chile, the National Disaster Prevention and Response Service, SENAPRED, deactivated the tsunami alert for the Magallanes region in the south of the country after a 7.4 magnitude earthquake. The SENAPRED informed the citizenship that they remain in a state of caution and warned them to stay away from the coast and head back to their homes and places of work. The authorities also prohibited activities in beach areas and confirmed there were no fatal victims or structural damage reported so far. They also highlighted the people's civic response and called to closely follow new instructions in the case of possible emergencies. The Mexican government welcomed Friday the United States' decision not to impose tariffs on auto parts produced in the country since they are considered within the Mexico-United States-Canada agreement. During her morning press conference, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum described as very good news the note published by the U.S. Custom Border Protection on May 1st, declaring zero tariff on auto parts produced in Mexico. On the other hand, Sheinbaum recalled that there remains only tariffs for Mexican steel and aluminum, but that these are tariffs that have been imposed to the whole world. According to the Mexican president, the export of auto parts represented $70 billion for the country and informed that negotiations continue with the United States to review other issues such as not charging double tariffs on steel and aluminum.
Después vino otro anuncio.
Then came another announcement that everything that is within the trade agreement, within the TMEC, has a zero tariff. And what is outside the treaty, which is being exported without tariffs, would have a tariff. What does this mean? That when you are inside the treaty, you have what are called rules of origin. It means that most of what is produced in Canada, in the United States or in Mexico.
Que la mayor parte de lo que se produce esté producido en Canadá, en Estados Unidos o en México.
If it does not have this rule of origin, then it was exporting through another mechanism of the World Trade Organization called Most Favored Nation. So at this moment what is within the treaty has zero tariffs. And what are the exceptions?
Entonces en este momento lo que está dentro del tratado tiene cero aranceles.
Steel and aluminum, which all the countries in the world have, and in vehicles and auto parts, preferential treatment has been given to everything that is produced within the treaty, particularly auto parts, because they continue to have zero tariffs. So that is the situation we are in now.
The Trump administration abrogated the de minimis exemption for goods imports from China. This way, via an executive order, Trump is to set a value equal or less than $800 to all imported merchandise which had been sent without postal network. This measure started to be enforced as of today, May 2nd, which would affect shipments that were previously exempt from duties. Thus, it would benefit paramount e-commerce platforms such as Temu and Shein. Likewise, postal shipments with a value of up to $800 would face a 30% tariffs of their worth or a flat rate of $25 per shipment, which would ramp up to $50 per shipment as of June 1st. In the United States, family members of at least 11 federal judges have been victims of harassment and death threats following judicial rulings against the Donald Trump administration in dozens of politically charged cases. According to a recent investigation conducted by the Reuters news agency, more than 600 posts were identified on social media and right-leaning message boards since February, targeting family members of judges who ruled against the Trump administration. The attacks included physical threats and anonymous deliveries to their homes with images of their murdered relatives. Some users have also demanded the arrest or execution of the judges and their families. This campaign of systematic intimidation has generated tension among jurists who fear that these actions could have a deterrent effect within the judiciary. Polls opened in the Australian general election on Saturday morning as the declining dominance of the two major parties make it difficult to predict the results. Voters will elect members of the 48th Parliament of the country with all of the 150 seats in the House of Representatives and 40 of the 76 seats in the Senate. The incumbent Labour government, led by Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, will seek re-election, while the Liberal National Coalition, led by opposition leader Peter Dutton, attempts to return to government after one term in the opposition. Several other parties that have historically only achieved minor party status and a number of independents will also be contesting the election. On May 3rd, more than 2.75 million voters in Singapore will head to the polls in the country's general elections, where 97 parliamentary seats are being decided. Citizens will choose between 11 political parties and 2 independent candidates who will be elected after 9 days of campaigning. Precisely the election campaign period, which focused on the economic situation and the youth vote, ended at midnight on May 1st. With an economy mostly based on exports, political analysts note that the elections are marked by uncertainty due to the tariff war, and highlighted that whoever gets elected will focus its administration on boosting international trade. We have a second toll break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final shower break, we'll be right back. Welcome back to From the South. The Palestinian Authority in the Gaza Strip denounced this Friday that the genocidal Israeli regime is using hunger as a weapon of war. The Gazan government press office denounced Israel's blockade and destruction of access to food, medical supplies and other humanitarian supplies destined for the Palestinian people. In this regard, the authority stressed that these actions are a flagrant violation of international humanitarian law and the Geneva Convention. Furthermore, the agency stresses that the Zionist siege causes the death of thousands of civilians, mainly children, and exposes others to the danger of starvation. Thousands of Yemenis marched through at least 36 public squares in the Saada Governorate to show their support for the Palestinian cause and to demand an end to the Israeli aggression in the Gaza Strip. The mobilization started its route in the Square of the Birth of the Prophet, west of the city, and then spread to the Martyrs' Leaders Square, Shahada Square. Carrying Palestinian flags and banners expressing their solidarity with the Palestinian people, demonstrators condemned the Zionist operation carried out against the enclave. These marches take place as an effort to denounce the worsening humanitarian crisis faced by Gazans due to the Israeli aggression and aid siege. Yemen denounces new airstrikes by the United States against residential areas in the city of Sana'a and the governorate of Al-Jawaf. The Yemeni authorities pointed out the bombings were carried out in strategic points in different parts of the city, leaving at least 3 people wounded. They also highlighted that Washington's attacks have intensified during the last few weeks. In this context, the authorities urged international organizations to intervene to stop the aggression against the civilian population in Yemen and Gaza. A ship belonging to the Freedom Flotilla initiative carrying humanitarian aid and activists to Gaza was attacked by a drone in the early hours of Friday in international waters of Malta. The Conscience vessel, which had 12 crew members and 4 activists on board, was approximately 22.5 kilometers east of Malta when it suffered 2 attacks from a drone. The strikes, which appeared to have deliberately targeted the generator, left the crew without power and put the vessel at serious risk of sinking. Activists on board the ship were reportedly on a mission to challenge Israel's illegal siege of Gaza and to deliver aid amid the humanitarian crisis in the Strip. In this context, the Freedom Flotilla International Coalition pointed to the Zionist regime as the strike's main possible perpetrator. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his Defense Minister Israel Katz announced Friday that the occupation forces had taken the offensive near the presidential palace in Damascus, capital of Syria. The Israeli forces targeted those who had been their allies in overthrowing the al-Assad government. The Zionist incursion occurred amid clashes between the Druze minority and pro-government fighters. In this context, the Prime Minister said Israel wouldn't allow the sending of forces to the south of Damascus or another threat to the Druze community. This in the context of an internal conflict between different ethnic groups and factions in Syria, triggered by the coup d'etat staged by terrorist forces now in power. In this context, the Syrian government denounced the Israeli attack against the presidential palace, considering it as an escalation against the country's institutions. The presidency pointed out that the attacks reflect Israel's desire to destabilize the nation and aggravate the security crisis faced by the people. In this sense, it called on the international community and the Arab countries to support Damascus in the face of the aggressions that violate international laws and conventions. The Vatican enters the countdown to the election of Pope Francis' successor with an extensive technological deployment to shield the security of the upcoming conclave. This way, the smokestack has already been installed, and the Vatican has informed on the implementation of a full digital blackout to prevent any attempt at electronic espionage. The initiative was explained by the director of the Vatican press room, who stated that in the digital era, extreme measures must be taken to guarantee the secrecy of the conclave, an inviolable demand for the process since the 13th century. Out of the 190 cardinals who took part in the days of reflection after the pontiff's passing, 100 will hold the responsibility of electing the new pope. Like this, we have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok as well. For Telesur English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.